Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Host City Americas for Panel 5, which is about fostering impact, legacy, DEI through major events. It's my pleasure to introduce John Siner, the founder and owner of Why Sport Matters, to moderate this panel. Over to you, John. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ben, and thank you for asking me again to host another session here at Host City Americas. Welcome, everybody. This is panel number 5 called Fostering Impact, Legacy, and DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion through Major Sporting Events. It's a very wide topic and lots to touch on today. And we're lucky to have 4 very distinguished people in the international sport world that can speak to this today. So we're excited about the conversation and the panel to come. So I'll do a quick introduction of everybody, and then we can get started. Firstly, myself. My name is John Siner. I'm coming to you from Florida today. I've been fortunate to have a long career in the international sport world between North America and internationally. I spent many years at the IOC in Switzerland, which was an amazing experience working with host cities all around the world. I eventually started my own agency where I was able to do even more different and various things, including being a longtime consultant with FIFA, specializing in FIFA World Cups, where now obviously it's coming to North America in 2026, where I was involved a little bit with a couple of the host cities. And now we're finally transitioning from a bidding phase to an operational phase. So excited about that. So let me quickly introduce our 4 distinguished panelists today, and then we'll get into the questions. So first we have Tania Braga. She is Brazilian, currently based in Lausanne. She has an academic and teaching background in economic, technical, social, and environmental trends. Very cool background, which she eventually transitioned into the Olympic world, spent 5 years at the Rio 216 organizing committee as head of sustainability, accessibility, and legacy, eventually transitioning after the games to go work for the IOC in a very similar role as head of Olympic Games Impact and Legacy. So we're looking forward to Tania's perspective from the Olympic world. Next, we have Kathryn Schloessman, American. She's been based in California for a long time, has 25 years with the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission, very experienced professional. Just a couple of her highlights under her leadership. She's attracted numerous high-profile sporting events, including recently Major League Baseball All-Star Game, Major League Soccer All-Star Game, the Super Bowl that was held earlier this year, U.S. Open Golf Championship, the College Football National Championships, and a couple weeks ago confirmed as a World Cup 2026 host city. So looking forward to Kathryn's participation as well. Next, we have Cindy Medynski, Canadian, based in Edmonton. She's been 6 years director at Edmonton Events, which is part of Explore Edmonton, which is their remit is to attract major sporting and cultural events to bring to the wonderful city of Edmonton. Previously been involved with World Triathlon and the 2015 FIFA World Cup, Women's World Cup, held a few years back. So nice to have Cindy. And then lastly but not least, Sarah Lewis, who second time we're on a panel together. Sarah is British, based in Switzerland, former competitive skier, Olympian, long time career in sport world, specifically in the International Ski Federation, where she was Secretary General for 20 years. She remains deeply involved with the Olympic movement, representing multiple IOC commissions, and she seems to be everywhere. All at the same time. And I think she's coming from Denmark today. She's actually participating in another conference. So now she's a global sports leader committed to making society better through sport. So that's probably a good way to kick off. Welcome, panelists, and let's dig in right to the questions, talking about, again, legacy, impact, and DEI. So let's start with Kathryn. Kathryn, coming from LA, you have a regular host of high-profile events all the time, every year. What are the why are legacy programs so important to the events, to the city, and to the events themselves?
So thanks, John. From an event perspective, the leaguer event doesn't want to spend $1 million and months of planning and staff time for a one-day event. It can't be, I always tell people, it can't be a one and done event. It's really not about the event itself. The events themselves, they want to be part of the community leading up to the event, and they really want to be part of the community for years following it. So they're building their fan base, they're engaging consumers for tickets, for sponsorship, and for television. But from a host city perspective, our perspective, it's about return on investment, ROI. Hosting major events like Super Bowls and World Cups cost host cities a lot of money. that money needs to be raised either privately or through a public-private partnership. But the host city is not the beneficiary of the event revenue. The tickets, the food and beverage money, the sponsorship, the parking revenue, that all flows back to the event owner. So the ROI, the return on investment for a host city, is really the economic impact, the hotels, rooms used, the sales tax, the media visibility that helps drive tourism. But most importantly, it is the community impact. The legacy programs that are built, that those are the ones that bring the funding and visibility to the local diverse businesses and the nonprofit community organizations. That's what's important, and that is what helps us raise the money to host these events.
Great. Switch to Cindy. Similar question. Edmonton is obviously an active bidder for big events as well. How do you factor in this legacy and impact component into the events that you look for and that you analyze whether you're going to bid for or not?
Well, we certainly are an active bidder, John. Edmonton has a rich history of hosting major sporting events that have left some incredible legacies in our community, starting with the Commonwealth Games in 1978, World Masters Games in 2005. Of course, you mentioned the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2015. And legacy, and in particular social benefit, are always a main factor when we're considering events that we're looking to attract to Edmonton. I know the economic and reputational values are much easier to measure and more straightforward, but we're really looking for event partners that carry similar values and have developed programs that provide alignment with our community goals. In particular, Edmonton has the second largest Indigenous population in Canada, and we work really hard to involve that community in the planning for major events. It's something that's very important to us, not only to Edmonton, but to Canada in general. We also look how we can bring events that are building on legacies from past events. So building on our volunteer pool, a legacy from 2001 World Athletics Championships, creating local experts in event delivery so that we can have that capacity and that expertise here in the city. And, major events that are providing opportunities for youth to participate in sport during the event and long after it has come and gone.
Yeah, you had actually mentioned to me earlier that Edmonton is a city that when they host an event, the whole city is engaged and comes out for it. And you mentioned how important this is and one of the unique aspects of Edmonton. How do you make sure that happens and you engage all your stakeholders?
Right. So Edmonton Events is unique because it's a partnership between the City of Edmonton and Explore Edmonton. So we can pull on partnerships and relationships at the local level from the city and from our tourism organization. So it's very important that our event rights holders and organizers are buying local and are supporting the community in those ways that really show our citizens the impact and the value of major events. I think it has to be a win-win for both sides of the coin, and that's something we really focus on. Like you said, Edmonton is more of a mid-sized city. Sometimes we have to work harder at promoting ourselves, and we do. And certainly we want to make sure that we're creating those legacies and seeing those events from start to finish all the way through.
Yeah, that's great. Let's move to Tania. Tania, ever since my time at the IOC, legacy became an important buzzword. We always talk about it. We always want to achieve it, but it's obviously very challenging. And now you're taking the reins of it at the IOC, which is fantastic. Maybe can you explain and update us where the IOC is right now on legacy with the Olympic host cities and even the wider Olympic movement in general?
Thank you, John. I think the important point here to understand is that legacy is more than just a buzzword. It's really part of the why the hosts are having the Olympic Games. It's about creating lasting benefits for the people, for the host territory, and for the sport movement. And in these past few years, we have done, I think, 3 major changes. And this was part of the work of the Olympic Agenda 2020. And we have adopted 3 golden rules when it regards to the games and its legacy. First one is that the games need to adapt to the host. It's not the host city or territory that will change to fit the games. What does it mean in very practical terms? These are projects that should fit the local reality. We should maximize the use of existing and temporary facilities, and there is a clear shift towards human legacies, how we can really create benefit for the communities and the people. On the second point of the games adapting to their times, we have seen recently the impact of the COVID pandemic and how, for example, the games in Tokyo 2020 and Beijing 2022 adapt to this, and how they create a legacy of managing health emergencies and pandemics for major events. But we have a very clear challenge that is climate change. And here we have a clear commitment for the Olympic Games to become climate positive after 2030. And they already climate neutral. And the third point, it's really the global challenge of physical activity, physical inactivity, how we can help to reduce physical inactivity globally and contribute to the target of the World Health Organization to have people more active. And last but not least, third point, legacy is something, it's a living thing and it keeps evolving. So we can see that many of those benefits that are delivered years before the games, they can continue for decades after. We can still find educational programs, youth sport initiatives that exist for many decades after the games. And our intention is really to plan, deliver, measure legacy the same way we do with the actual delivery of the 2 weeks of ceremonies and competition.
Yeah, that's great. I love this concept of customizing it to each individual event and host city. That's a nice evolution. I always hear about, examples of what's happening in the Olympic movement, but maybe you could share with us one or two examples of some of these host cities that you're working with now in the next 2 to 3 games that would be good examples to share.
Yeah, I think we can look at Paris 2024. That is the first games that was elected fully after the Agenda 2020. So we start by the fact that 95% of the venues are existing or temporary, freeing efforts to, instead of building new venues when we talk about legacy on infrastructure, the focus is to improve existing venues and create new spaces at a small scale for communities to practice sport. And then on what we call the human legacies, the key thing for Paris is that they have created a 50 million euro endowment fund that is being invested to increase the reach of sport in people's lives and to promote social information innovation through sport. So this fund is really being used to support activities at community level all across France in different initiatives to improve people's life through sport. One of the key, I would say, flagship projects they have is the 30 minutes of daily period of exercise in primary school. And this is in addition to the physical education lessons that is being now expanded at national level. The Games was really instrumental in getting the French government to adopt this initiative to get kids doing at least half of their daily need of physical activity at school with their regular teachers. And another very important point, Paris is the first games organized in line with Paris Agreement, and is having a 50% reduction on the carbon footprint compared to previous editions, making a big step towards this. And they will be the first one to have a climate positive event. Just a few examples with Paris.
Yeah, that sounds great. Wonderful to hear, Sarah. That's probably music to your ears as well. You've had a long history at an international federation. You've seen events from the sports side, the event owner side. How has this importance of legacy from your perspective, and how are things sports looking for in terms of legacy moving into the future?
Thanks very much, John, and fellow panelists. Good evening from Denmark. Good day to the Americas. And following on from Tania's very pertinent points, that from my perspective, the success of sports events are now really determined through the legacy and the impact from a range of the different perspectives for the various stakeholders involved. For example, for an international federation, they're interested in staging events that really promote the sport extensively, and they show the attributes of the sport in the best way to obtain maximum media impact, for example, and to excite the on-site audience. To satisfy existing followers, but also to stimulate interest with new potential fans, especially the youngsters, and from new countries and regions as well. Then the local organizer, that includes the authorities, they've got to ensure that there's a positive impact for the local community through a sustainable event. And in many, many cases, there's a significant investment of public money. So the community absolutely needs to get full value, both short and long term, from the event with, for example, great facilities for their own use, community activity that has a lasting impact, and the engagement of youngsters, schools, and all sectors of the community, including the businesses. Not to mention ensuring that the environmental considerations are properly managed as well. So then you have the National Association, and they use the major events to focus on their athlete performances and achieving high-profile success, and thereby stimulating interest in the development and hopefully attracting new youngsters who want to emulate their heroes. I can give you some insights from the legacies of the Beijing 2022 Olympic Winter Games, the last major event, where I was supporting the Chinese Winter Sports Association with their preparations for the performances of their teams. But let me know how time's looking there, John.
All right, I'll make a note that maybe we come back to that one. So let's maybe take a minute to transition into the other topic that we're supposed to cover here is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is obviously last few years has really risen in prominence into the social discourse internationally. So let's maybe start with Cindy. In Edmonton, how do you make sure there's a positive impact to the local and diverse businesses and the stakeholders and partners that you need to engage with to ensure this happens? Telling me some interesting stories previously, and please would love to hear a little bit more on that.
Sure. So, of course, our main mandate is to attract sport events to our city, but we've really spent a lot of time over the last few years building capacity within our organization to really support that impact that comes to the city. So we have an event development team within our organization whose mandate is to provide custom local support for events that have been attracted to Edmonton. So this step in our process, it really ensures that event producers are buying local and that we're maximizing that positive impact on businesses. This team connects rights holders to vetted local businesses. Many are from the BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities. So for example, our team is creating a suppliers list, and they prioritize those that have the B Corp certification, the ones leading the ways for inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economy. And we also are prioritizing, we're trying to educate on what is called a Rainbow Registered organization. It's a national Canadian accreditation that's assigned to LGBTQ plus friendly businesses and organizations. And if some of those pieces are in place and the organizations that we are working with locally are making commitment to some of those really important initiatives, we're confident that the right work is being done. We've also worked really hard with our dedicated sustainability team to pilot a few programs. There's a partnership with Fill It Forward. So through major events, they encourage reusable drinking containers and pair that with charitable giving in our city. So a really great connection through sustainability and that community impact. We also provide support for a waste audit. So our rights holders can develop a benchmark so they can consistently, measure the waste that they produce from events and try to decrease that. We also are here to help co-develop a custom plan for events to become carbon neutral. So this only works if rights holders and event producers are on board. So that's, again, why it's so important for us to start from the beginning and find alignments with partners that really have these values like we do. I mentioned a few partners. It takes a lot of consultation with a lot of our stakeholders and community members, since we know we aren't the experts and we can't pretend to be, but we certainly try to provide those opportunities to create a positive impact and really educate our community on the value of major events.
And I know that your area, and including all of Canada, has a special relationship with the First Nations and the Indigenous population as well. And I know you guys continually are very proactive in engaging that community well. Maybe speak real briefly on your inclusion activities there.
Sure. I think, like I mentioned before to John, we in Edmonton, we have the second highest Indigenous population in Canada. So again, it is really important for us to make sure that that community is consulted and brought to the table for major events. These events are taking place on their land in Treaty 6 territory. And I think it's important for them not to be an afterthought. It's important for them to be at the table from the beginning, and for us to be educated on how to incorporate them. And it's a long learning process, but it's one that we need to engage in. Our Indigenous groups are so happy to be involved in this as well. There's a ton of things that they can contribute. We talk about how we can make sure Indigenous youth is thought about when we're bringing major events, how we can include Indigenous artwork into this and really raise awareness of our Indigenous community and the history there.
Yeah, that's great. Kathryn, Los Angeles and Southern California is obviously a mega population center, and you no doubt have communities far and wide. How do you engage communities when you host a major event that you always do to ensure this kind of inclusion?
Yeah, I would just piggyback on something that Cindy just said, and I love hearing that everybody is doing these programs now, because when I started in the business many years ago, it was really, you were so focused in the event business about putting the event on and driving traffic, et cetera. And the community events, while they were important, I don't think they were as much of a focus as they have become now. And I've really seen such a shift on, again, the event is great and we need to host a really good event. We need to have a good guest experience. But, like Sarah said, like Cindy said, if we're not engaging our local community, if we're not giving opportunities to our local businesses, if we're not helping our nonprofits, if we're not giving our kids a chance to work on these events in our local communities, then we have failed. And really, part of it is a financial thing. And as we all said earlier, that, a lot of public money is typically, spent on some of this. A lot of private money is raised to host it. And you have to give the whole community an opportunity to participate, because these events really are, the attendance is really limited to 65 or 70,000, depending on what size your arena or your stadium is. And it really can't just be about the event. It has to be about everything happening around that. I will say the two things that we're most proud of, I think, is I'll use Super Bowl as our most recent example. We have a program that the NFL started a program 7 years ago, Peter O'Reilly, called Business Connect. And it was really important for the NFL when they went to various host cities that they were giving local businesses an opportunity to participate. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. If you're bringing in outside contractors into a community, how's that helping the local community? And so the Business Connect program, which we're continuing on past Super Bowl, gave us an opportunity to choose 250 local diverse businesses in the event production space who were capable to provide all the different services. And what we do is 18 months before the event comes, we choose those organizations. We give them workshops and training and opportunities to get their foot in the door. Because I always tell these businesses, we can only get you to the table. You've got to be able to sell your wares to get the business. But that's a way of engaging the local diverse businesses, the women-owned, the minority-owned, vet-owned, LGBTQ plus owned businesses, and giving them visibility. And I have to tell you, it was so exciting we hosted a couple of networking events leading up to Super Bowl, and having these businesses come up to me. This is during COVID, so everybody had their masks on, but come up to me and tell me how honored they were to be part of the NFL family and be part of this event. And they were so thankful and so grateful. It really, that to me was everything in hosting these events. Those are the people you want to help. It's nice that the fans have a great experience of the game, but hearing that from our local businesses that you really made a difference in their lives means a lot. And so we decided after that success to continue this program throughout the decade and hopefully longer than that, but because it was so successful. So Business Connect is one about, and that's how you engage the local diverse community businesses who might not be going to the game or might not even care about the event that you're hosting, but then they care because there's business in it for them. And then the second piece is the legacy programs that I know all my counterparts here on this call have in their own cities. But what we do different themes based on what event comes to town. So as an example, we have the College Football Playoff National Championship coming in January to SoFi Stadium. They're all about teachers and educators and helping them. So we created our legacy program leading up to that, where we're choosing a certain number of educators in local schools and educational programs who are using sports, play, and movement to help social emotional learning of the kids. And what we're doing is we're taking all that great media visibility that comes around a big event like a Super Bowl or college football playoff and shining that light on those organizations who are doing good work in the community. That's where these events really make an impact. It's not just about driving more traffic to the event. It's about taking all the attention, the excitement, and shining a light on the people doing good in your community, helping them raise their visibility, helping them being able to fundraise more and make a bigger impact on your community. And that's what we're most excited about.
Yeah, those are really, really good examples. Happy to hear those. When we talked the other day, I said that the reason why destinations want to attract events is to have these legacies and these impacts and the community involvement. But yet when it comes down to it, often the event operations and putting on the event itself becomes the highest priority. So these kind of softer areas often get pushed to the lower priority. How do you ensure that these softer elements are integrated into the planning process and in the end delivered, because they are your core objectives for wanting to host an event?
They're your priority, because as we have to privately fundraise for these major events. And so in order to do that, those donors, those philanthropic organizations, they don't care about how many eyeballs are on the Super Bowl game. They don't care about how many tickets are sold. They care about what are you doing for the community? What are the programs that are lasting longer? Philanthropic organizations don't like to fund one and done events. They want ongoing community programs that are leaving impact and making an impact on the community. And so it's risen to the top, because financially you can't raise the money if you aren't really providing those programs and measuring results and showing those results to everybody. You can't just say nice things and we've got a few community things and sports is great. That doesn't fly anymore. You really have to have metrics in place, measurable results. Otherwise, you're not going to get the financial support that you need.
Yeah. Sarah, from a sport perspective, sports, especially winter sports, are challenged by a lack of inclusion. Certainly, like looking at geographical conditions, other barriers of entry. How can sports, all sports, look to widen their audience and increase their appeal to all segments of society?
Thanks for an important question, actually. And well, focusing on winter sports, there are certainly a few different prohibited elements. You've mentioned a couple, but for example, the cost, such as the specialist equipment that's required, traveling to events, either to participate or to watch or to be part of them, and basically not knowing anything about the sport because they're lesser known in some countries, and not seeing persons like themselves actually doing the sports. They're amongst the challenges for winter sports in many countries. And yeah, major events can be really a great opportunity to establish partnerships with the local community, with integrating specific programs to be as inclusive as possible, as Kathryn was saying, and as all of our major events. For example, by establishing activities with the schools, both as part of their school learning curriculum, using it as a key theme for projects and things like that, but also doing the specific winter sports, skiing, snowboard, biathlon, ski mountaineering, skating, ice hockey, luge, bobsleigh, curling, so that they really feel connected to the event. And well, the venue, the infrastructure, when it actually comes to inclusion, they need to be fully accessible and they need to be equipped so that everybody can attend and they can be catered for regardless of any disability or other ability, as I like to call it. And the information, the promotional material about the event need to provide details about the facilities, the arrangements for the various disabilities, and they can see themselves in the materials, and in order that that there are experts who really properly understand these areas and the requirements, and implementing them as effectively and efficiently as possible. It's key to incorporate persons, representatives from the various different interest groups as part of the organizing committee. And that's that I think of those the crux of the matter. For example, also the involvement of charities, of local charities, of international charities. The athletes very much want to engage with them these days, and to give back and to contribute to them and to supporting them. And major events are a wonderful opportunity to be inclusive to those less fortunate than ourselves.
Great. Switching, Tania, from an Olympic and IOC perspective, what is the movement and IOC specifically been doing in terms of societal inclusion and diversity?
Yeah, starting, I think one key point is gender equality. It's about equality for half of the population and how it can manifest on and out of the field of play. So the IOC has a strategy to promote gender inclusion. And if we look, for example, at the events, the Olympic and Paralympic Games, you started with promoting equal participation on the field of play. If we look at the Olympic Games in Tokyo, for example, 48% of the athletes were women. 28 out of the 33 sports in the program had an equal number of medal events for women and men, but also out of the field of play. And here we have still a lot of challenges and work to do, for example, to increase the number of women coaches. Although it has increased, it's an area that much more effort needs to be done. If we look at Tokyo as well, there was almost a double of the number of women that was accredited as a delegation chief, but there's still a lot of work to do in this area, but also in terms of leadership. Members, women in decision-making bodies, how to promote effective leadership and more opportunities and in positions of decision-making. But there is also three aspects that I think we usually don't think that immediately. First one is on safe sport. The creation of a sport environment that's respectful, equitable, and free from all forms of harassment and abuse at all levels in sport. This is a key concern when we think about gender equality and diversity at large. There is the question of portrayal. That's something we still need to work a lot. It means, by portrayal, we mean the language. Which words and expressions, images are used to describe the women athlete in comparison to the man athlete? What's the quality and the quantity of coverage and the prominence that's given to women's sport? So this is an area that still we need a lot of education and collective work. And of course, resource allocation. How is funding, facilities, non-financial support distributed between men and women athletes? It's an area that we have started doing work, but there is much more to do. And the second important aspect that's really important, the Olympic Games is organized together with the Paralympic Games. So this is really an important message to society to promote people, the opportunities for people of different abilities to practice sport and to demonstrate their contribution to society.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, plenty of work still to be done, but it's wonderful to see that all of you are raising this as a priority and it's coming to the forefront of major events. I want to come back to Kathryn. You know, LA is going to go through an amazing next few years, right? You have two of the biggest international events kind of booked back to back with the FIFA Men's World Cup in 26 and then the Los Angeles Summer Games in 28. And then looking, you know, knowing that the LA 84 games were a wonderful example of legacy, curious as to what the plans are for both of these big events in terms of legacy for Los Angeles.
Right, John. Yeah, the 1984 games left the LA 84 Foundation with about $93 million to invest back in the community. So having a legacy like that has lived on for, what is it now, 37, my math's not that great, years, but they've grown that endowment. They continue to invest in youth sports and youth programs all over the city, the region, actually all over Southern California, and they've done an amazing job. They actually are also a partner in all of our major events because they have such reach into the youth sports and they know where the need is, and they are the experts who know how to do this. So they've been a great partner in creating legacy programs for the Super Bowl and the college football playoff. We're working with them on creating the legacy program for the FIFA World Cup for us as one of the host cities. But it's still a little too soon to tell. You have to build your legacy programs as you go along and see the specific need in the market and where there is the most need and the most interest in helping, and also what role can you play as a legacy program. There's certain problems in our community and our society that we're probably not the best position to help, but there's certainly a lot of other areas that we can through sports and play and these events. So to be determined on what the program is for FIFA and for the Olympics. I know that the LA 28 team is doing a lot of listening and going around all the different communities to really understand where they can make the most impact, because that's very important. That's the most important thing to them, is making sure everybody is included. And the motto in Los Angeles, back to your DEI question, is everybody is welcome here. It was launched a few years ago by Los Angeles Tourism. It's a very simple statement, but we live by that here. Everybody is welcome here. We want them to feel like that, and we believe that. And that's the legacy programs will be built around that.
It's an exciting time for sure. Um, Maybe taking, as we kind of transition into the last 10 minutes here, we can take a look at the future. And maybe Tanya, I'll start with you. You know, in your work, you're probably working on some very cool things for the future. How can you explain briefly what the IOC is doing as it looks far ahead and into the future on these elements?
Yeah, I think the direction when we're looking to the future is really exciting, based on this shift that I mentioned, to focus much more on human legacies and the importance really to make the most of the opportunity of the years of organizing the games to create benefits for the communities and the local territory. And I think if we think long term, Brisbane 32, it's a very good example. They have, as part of, at the core of their proposal for the games, is a legacy program that they call 10 plus 10, 10 years before, 10 years after the games. That is completely aligned with the long-term development plans for the area in Brisbane and Queensland, and the place that sport have in the life of every citizen, and a perspective they have to use these years, 10 years of preparation and then the decade that comes after, to really accelerate projects on well-being. And here we're talking about physical well-being, sport practice, physical activity, but also how it helps in terms of mental well-being, community well-being, which kind of projects can be created. And they have a big place on their project for partnership with the native and Aboriginal communities in the Queensland.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing story. Quickly, Sarah, from the sport and event owner side, where is this going, in your opinion, in terms of the way major events can foster these elements, impact, legacy, DEI, etc.?
They're not optional anymore. They are an absolute integral part of the event. It's not even a discussion. The fact is that sustainability, inclusion, DEI, they're part of the DNA of the event. And that's absolutely a positive. It's a win-win-win for everybody involved. For sure, for the future, the legacy, the long-term impact, the value of the event itself, for the local community, for the global community. And that's not just true in sports, that's true of all events, that's true across society at large, that we've got to be a diverse society. We've got to respect and do things in a sustainable way. Otherwise, unfortunately, the planet, it doesn't have the capacity to be able to handle things anymore. And so part of the DNA. And I saw Kathryn, Cindy, Tania, everybody nodding as well. So I think that applies to the events in your city. That applies, Tania, to very much the philosophy of the IOC. And there's some really terrific work going on there, taking a leadership role for the whole of international sport.
I wanted to come back with you quickly because you had an example from Beijing to share.
Yeah, I did. What I'd like to talk to you about is the legacy from the Beijing 2022 Games. And basically, it was threefold. The first was to become a recognized winter sport nation. China has been very well known for its capacity within the Summer Games, but much lesser so only in the acrobatic sports and some skating events. for the Winter Games. And the whole point was really to expand on this. Well, the fact that the IOC president welcomed China as a winter sport nation at the closing ceremony, I think ticked that box very, very much. The second point concerns the health and the welfare of the population. And in fact, the government has integrated winter sports within the national plan for healthy living, because this is a priority for China. Society there has evolved with the fast food phenomenon over the years, and people don't travel on bicycles anymore. Excuse me. So that's been a very important point. It's included within the curriculum of the schools, and there's a highly active element of winter sports, which is a long period of the year, actually, in the northern part of China. And then the third and final point is to create a new economy within the country through tourism, and for Chinese enterprises throughout the industry. That both means within the country, because there's a certain amount of equipment and facilities and so on, which are fundamental for winter sports, but also for Chinese enterprises throughout the sport globally. And just to give you some numbers, there was a global population of snow sport participants totaling 150 million. Well, China have activated more than 350 million new winter sport participants. So effectively, more or less trebling the global number of snow sport. Well, in fact, that's across winter sports. So probably approaching trebling the number of snow sport participants, and then of course a huge increase also for ice sport participants too, and that for the global industry, for the sport, and for its future is tremendous. And these elements were in place and up and running from 2 years before the Games. Although, of course, over the past 2 years, the actual delivery has been impacted by the pandemic. But in any case, there is now very much a major enthusiasm for winter sports, and they're looking forward to the upcoming winter, when hopefully also the country will be more accessible, and we've already seen signs of that with reduced quarantine periods now implemented.
Those are wonderful examples and statistics. Thank you for sharing. It's another great example of the potential and the impact that these major sporting events can certainly have on the destinations and the sports themselves. So fantastic. Cindy, thank you for sharing with us your stories. Edmonton is a very special place indeed to host an event. Tania, I love the work you're doing at the IOC, especially since I go back to my days there and working on this stuff too. Amazing to see how far it's come. So congratulations on your work. And Kathryn, maybe a final word from you as we wrap up, just as another reminder of what these major events really can do and the power of them.
I think everybody said everything that needs to be said. I mean, they bring an incredible impact and legacy, and we need to keep bringing these to the community because they are good for our community.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you very much to the four of you. That's been a very engaging session. Our time has come to a close, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But again, thanks to our panelists. Thanks to Ben and Host Cities for having us involved. So I will throw it back to Ben. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. An engaging panel indeed. Thanks so much to all of our panelists there. It's really heartening to hear. I've worked in this sector for many years, as I'm sure many of you have, and the way that the conversation evolves over the years, and the extent to which issues like sustainability and inclusion and diversity just get higher and higher up the agenda, as they rightly should, of course. So thank you for that. And so we're going to take a slightly longer break now than the previous breaks, and we'll be back here for panel 6 at 19:45 British Standard Time, British Summer Time, beg your pardon, which is 14:45 Eastern Daylight Time, for panel 6, which is about the role of events in promoting people and places, about how major events can create opportunities to transform places and communities, and the role of technology in that. So don't go away too far away, and see you back here in about 50 minutes. Thanks.